Hi, my name is Amanda Panacea, and you're listening to the Healer Revolution podcast. This is a community for self-healers, biohackers, practitioners, and any other helping professionals. You're in the right place if you're seeking conversations about how pain becomes passion, the connection between physical, energetic, mental, and our spiritual self, finding your body's ancient wisdom, the latest biohacking technologies, clinical research, and if you just want to nerd out about complex biochemistry and quantum physics. But this is also for entrepreneurs who seek infinite abundance and a supportive community. So pour a cup of King coffee or Sisters tea and let's join the revolution. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Amanda Panacea. Welcome back to the Healer Revolution podcast. And today I'm really excited to get to have a chat with Greg, the Hydrogen Man. Some of you guys have probably seen me raving about this new hydrogen machine that I got, but there's a lot to learn about molecular hydrogen, and you definitely just don't want to go out and buy any old molecular hydrogen machine. So, hi, Greg. Thank you so much for being here today with me. It's a little early here, late there for you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. It's great.
Yeah, so I want to know your history. Well, how did you become the Hydrogen Man? Because I know that you went through some really horrific health issues as well, and I love to hear like the pain to passion stories.
Well, it wasn't a route that I thought I would go down. I wasn't really interested in the whole, health field. Unfortunately for me, I started having a lot of major medical issues. And I got put in a position where, ironically, I worked in the medical field for like 2 decades. So I was in the field for a long time. And I knew what would happen behind the scenes. I knew what we could and couldn't do, quote unquote, with modern medicine. And which was kind of sad and very revealing after, doing that line of work for many years, especially working with a lot of specialists and I saw it all. And so what ended up happening after that, when I got really sick, I was just like, oh no, here we go. Because I just got I got really unlucky. That's my opinion. But I had tumors throughout my body. I had a heart condition, which was pretty nasty. And I had issues with my immune system, kind of like an autoimmune issue. And so it was causing just major inflammation and pain throughout my body to the point where, like, I remember like a remote control for a TV, I couldn't do this because my joints hurt so bad. That was one of my low points. I remember, I got really emotional, obviously, and I started crying because I used to be really athletic and I literally couldn't walk. There was a lot of points where I was in so much pain, that I couldn't stand up. And that makes it very difficult to live. And then, of course, my liver, my kidneys, like my immune system, my gut, they all really had issues and, just wasn't doing really well at all. And I was starting to lose. I was even having actually some bone loss that was pretty extreme considering, my age. And so just a lot of these type of things that were, quote unquote, happening with my health. And
Did they ever tell you why?
Do they ever know?
Yeah.
Really, when you go into, modern medicine, usually what they're going to tell you is they're going to say, look, here's some painkillers, here's some anti-inflammatories, here's some statins, this type of thing. They don't really have a solution for a lot of these types of problems, and they don't really know what caused them. I had my own suspicions, and I unfortunately did some things to my own body that were pretty bad throughout my life, and I didn't treat myself the best. And so, that could have caused them, but the truth is nobody really knows. Kind of like when somebody gets cancer or something, they don't really know. It's like, oh, why do these tumors appear? And, things of that nature. So that was kind of the story really, really, started and took off. And I didn't really, I don't know. I'm different than other people. Everybody's different. And for me, like, if I really, really want to figure something out, and it's like in my heart to try to just figure something out, I really have this knack for figuring things out that the average person just doesn't. But I have to be like really wanting it, because we're talking about, hours and hours of reading every single day for years and years. And so you gotta really want it. And I got to that point when I couldn't walk. When I couldn't walk and I couldn't use a remote, I mean, I just broke down in tears, and I felt like I'd never get my life back. And I made a prayer, when we're at a low point. That's what I did. I just prayed all of a sudden, and I was just asking for guidance. And I did ask. I said, look, if you can show me the way on how to really repair this body and find my way, I promise that I'll share with others. And something changed probably within a week, maybe 2 weeks from that time. And I did learn. I read a scientific study. So I'm data driven. So I'm really finicky about, like, there's a lot of information out there, and I don't trust a lot of it. And I find that there's a lot of bad information when it comes to health and just the science in general. So I really have to find really, really good data and things that make sense, and then figure out the best way to implement, how to take action. Like, for example, water. Water is a huge part of my protocols, and almost every single water filter out there is not good enough. I know every water filtration modality in existence. I know what they cannot filter out. And so when I was researching water, I got really frustrated, actually, because everybody's always claiming some water is the best for you. Somebody's like, oh, alkaline water is best for you. No, spring water is best for you. No, distilled water is best for you. All these different types of things. And so I had to do a lot of independent thinking. And I remember, like, this is the way that my brain works. I just thought to myself, okay, there's all these different types of water. Which one is the best one? Well, I would just want clean water. Isn't that what I would want? I just want clean water. And what exactly is the cleanest water? And so then I would observe nature. And how does nature purify water? And that's when I learned that nature does it through a process of distillation. That's the way that nature cleans water, which starts with hydrogen. It starts with the sun. Sun hits the ocean, steam rises. And it's a distillation process. And I even have a lab report here. So I found out that the best way to clean water, based on data, so on actual lab reports, and there's a ton of different things here. It shows the numbers of, for example, right now, a big one right now in the news, and I've known about it for a long time, is PFAS. I'm sure you're aware of PFAS.
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, PFAS right here, for example, you probably can't see it, but it's at a 7 in this water, obviously, that they tested. And then after going through the process of carbon distillation, it's at a 0. And actually, everything ends up at a 0, meaning that this is really taking everything out of the water, which is actually very important, in my opinion, just to clean it. And then I learned, through more research, that no water filter, again, in existence removes all viruses, all bacteria, all parasites, except for carbon distillation, which is the method that I use. And I should say, I don't give any medical advice. I don't make any medical claims. I forgot to say that at the beginning.
Of course, yeah.
Please consult your physicians. So that's how I first started with understanding the cleanliness of water. But then, of course, I learned about hydrogen, and we are talking about specifically molecular hydrogen. And then I started reading the medical data on that, and it blew me away. When I was reading that, I thought to myself, this can't even be real. Like, I thought it was a scam, And I am a very skeptical person, and I need a lot of data from different places to really, I guess, believe it before I invest too much into it, buying some supplement, trying something. So I did a lot of homework, basically. And I kept trying different protocols, obviously, on myself, trying to find my way back. And it just led down a wild road. I don't know. It's hard to even say exactly what happened, but I learned so much and began to implement all these different things. And not only did I find my way, I started discovering things as far as transforming my health that I just thought were impossible, but I was proving them. I mean, I was getting a lot of blood work. I was getting checkups on, the different issues that I had. Then I even started applying some of these techniques for just people close to me, like family members, and friends. There was one person who had, like, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, arthritis, and just a lot of gut issues. And I did one of my protocols with super clean water and hydrogen. He didn't even change his diet, which is another part of, my protocols, of course. But The easiest one is clean water, clean hydrogen. All those issues went away. And it was mind blowing, the things that I was seeing, and people getting off of pharmaceuticals. And so, water makes such a massive difference. And even with, for example, improving testosterone levels, for people who, get old and that affects them, or even both men and women, balancing out their hormones. And, just, accelerated healing, which I'm going through right now due to a broken bone. And so, going through that. But that's kind of the gist of the story. I don't know if that really answers your question. But it took a lot. And the real data in regards to hydrogen really comes from Japan.
Yeah.
I was shocked. For people out there, I will say, I was shocked what I learned what was in water. Absolutely shocked. Like some of the stuff we all know that our water's pretty nasty. What I didn't know, for example, is that we have radioactive contaminants in our water. The average person, I don't think, knows that. I didn't know that. I was like, radioactive contaminants, what? Then, of course, through the process of carbon distillation, it does remove 99.8% of them. So that's huge. And I just learned, what I've learned is that the majority of people with medical issues, it's something they're doing, unfortunately, to themselves. They're just not aware that they're doing it. I've had numerous doctors contact me. It's been kind of wild. I remember I had a doctor contact me with my last blood work. She saw my blood work and she called me, and I was worried, because in the medical field, when you get a phone call from a doctor, it's usually not a good sign. And I was worried. Usually, when they don't call you, that's kind of what you want, quote unquote. And anyway, getting this phone call, it got me worried. But it turned out, and I've never had anything like this quite happen before, but she was calling me because she said, I've observed people's blood work for like over 3 decades. And she said, in all the years that I've been doing this, she said, I've never seen blood work like yours. And she said, call. And all the doctors that have contacted me throughout the years, it's always, oh, shoot, did you hear that alarm?
No, I don't hear it.
Sorry, I think I had an alarm when we were going to meet.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
And sorry about that. But so basically, I've proven, at least to myself and throughout many years, that these techniques work. And they're not complicated. They're pretty easy. They're accessible to the average person. What surprises me is how much it's impressed a lot of physicians. I've had oncologists contact me, cancer doctors. I've literally worked with people who I've seen their tumors either disappear, shrink, a lot of just different protocols that I've created throughout the years. So yeah. I don't think it's that complicated as people make it sometimes.
Yeah, I totally agree. I do think, of course, food, light, sleep, the foundations that a lot of people don't even do are super important. But really just being able to add in this one piece with the water, with molecular hydrogen, seems to make a massive difference, like 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times more than even like supplement protocols and other types of interventions. I'm sure you tried all sorts of like crazy stuff. Did you ever do like ozone, or, getting into like a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm not against those. What a lot of people don't know about oxygen or ozone, and I don't want people to misunderstand the statement, because it's been highly misunderstood when I talk about it. But oxygen is oxidizing. So oxygen is not really what I would call the life molecule, though you need oxygen. So don't get me wrong, you need oxygen. Ultimately, what has been discovered, and they're great, like ozone's really good, in my opinion, at killing things. Again, proper oxygenation, in my opinion, really helps keep your system actually cleaner, clean from, certain like bacteria and parasites and all this type of stuff. But we already get a lot of oxygen. Like in our atmosphere, we're already getting 20%, 21% oxygen roughly. And our ability to be able to have proper saturation of oxygen in our blood actually has a lot to do with a lot of the food we eat, for example, and just our health in general. So, for example, I've worked with people, and I have tons of examples, but one guy in particular that's coming to mind, he was smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day for 50 years. And that really screwed him up. And he was having major problems with oxygen saturation levels in his blood. And he was desperate. Because here's what happens. A lot of people don't know this either, but they put him on oxygen. The more he used oxygen, like supplemental oxygen, the worse it would get because his body would become dependent on it. Your goal is not to become dependent on extra oxygen. That's why oxygen protocols, the average person doesn't really know how to do a proper oxygen protocol. I mean, I haven't really seen people know how to use them properly. You have to stop using the oxygen here and there. You can only use it every so often. Otherwise, your body begins to adapt and it literally begins to make less red blood cells because it's like, look, we're getting plenty of oxygen. We don't need to make a lot of red blood cells. Where if you take a pro athlete, for example, one of the methods that they actually do is do the opposite. They actually give themselves less oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like mimicking high altitude. And that gets the body to produce more red blood cells because it's looking for more oxygen to try to bring in. And then when you do that, then you give yourself more oxygen. So again, there's protocols because then you flood the body with it. Your body does great, but it can only do it for so long. And we're talking just days. We're not talking weeks, months. And so, yes, I do know about that type of information. But one thing I noticed with the hydrogen, and again, I've done it multiple times, the hydrogen actually appears, again, in my opinion, because I don't like to give medical advice, but I literally saw it make the body become more efficient at utilizing the oxygen we already have, that we're already breathing in the atmosphere. So this guy was literally, he couldn't get off his oxygen for 1 minute. I mean, he was completely tied to the tanks. And it was really sad. And then he did my protocol. And after about, I think it was 3 to 4 months, he's like, dude, I can get off my tanks for 3 hours. He said, that was just the beginning. He wasn't done yet, but hydrogen is kind of like anything as far as like the longer you do it, like a protocol, like staying in shape or something like this. It's a lifestyle, like drinking clean water. I mean, you don't just drink clean water for a day or a week. It's just, that's what we do every day. We drink clean water. And so I've really seen some amazing things in regards to what it's done for, for example, the oxygen levels. But I am a fan of ozone, actually. But it's the same thing as molecular hydrogen. It's really important to make it correctly. You can't just get some cheapy little machine. You want to make what's called, what I really think is important for people to understand is medical grade gases. We're talking about gas. I mean, this is really what we're talking about. Oxygen's a gas. Ozone is O3, it's a gas. Molecular hydrogen is a gas. And so people need to understand that when it comes to gases, at least in my opinion, clean water is super important. But clean gases, it's more important. I mean, we're breathing this stuff in, it goes straight to our brain. And the average person doesn't understand what is medical grade and what's not medical grade. Are you aware of the differences?
Well, I would think contaminants and the way that it's produced. So like, I obviously we'll get into this, but like some of the ways that they're making the molecular hydrogen can involve like metal plates and things like that.
Absolutely.
Is that kind of what you mean by medical grade?
Yeah, absolutely. So like a real simple example, but you're absolutely correct. It has to do with purity. Mm-hmm. That's really of the gas. And so when you go to a hospital and they have an oxygen tank there, that is very different than if you go to a welding center and they have an oxygen tank there. They're both oxygen, but it has to do with the purity. It's like drinking, tap water from, I don't know, New York or something, or some city, as compared to the carbon distilled water that that I drink every single day, because I like clean water. And just to show people the importance of it, and I just want people to know this if they're trying to change their health. That's why I'm kind of beating that dead horse. Have you ever heard of a neti pot?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And the average person doesn't really read the directions of the neti. Have you read them before?
Oh, yeah. And I actually know people who have not followed the directions and have had complications. We'll just put it at that.
Some people have literally died
Yeah.
from not doing it correctly. Now, people might say, okay, what's the correct way? And for people who don't know, a neti pot is just a little tiny pot. You put water in it with some saline, and you can put different things in there. Now, be really careful. I always want to caution people, but I put things in there like food grade hydrogen peroxide, but very small amounts, by the way. Otherwise, you will absolutely burn your sinuses and cause some major problems. So don't do it if you don't know what you're doing, by the way. But the water goes through your sinuses, like if you have the flu or some type of, I don't want to say the name of anything because get your channel.
Thank you.
But hopefully people will understand. But you run this water through your sinuses. Now, if you read the instructions, it specifically tells you that the only water you should use is distilled water. And the reason I call it carbon distilled is because just the process of distillation doesn't clean the water completely. The process of distilling with carbon filtration also, so the combination totally cleans the water. And you only want to run the purest water through your sinuses. I know people who've literally had like $5,000 filters. They think they have the best water, and it's like, look, it's not good enough. I'm sorry, but osmosis, 5-stage, 10-stage, ultraviolet light, all this stuff, carbon filters, none of it's enough. Only carbon distillation truly purifies your water. And otherwise, you can make yourself very sick. And people don't realize that. So if you think about that's the kind of water that you're running through your sinuses, that it has to be to that level of quality. Think about the quality of water that you want to, be drinking. And I've created all sorts of protocols with the water. Like for the eyes, I've worked with people who've had like glaucoma, macular degeneration, a lot of different eye issues. And I'm shocked at the results, even myself. I mean, all this stuff that's happened throughout these years of all these protocols that I've done, I still can't believe it, because how does the medical establishment not know this? I don't understand. Or a lot of naturopaths, and so I'm really skeptical of a lot of the doctors out there, quote unquote, and quote unquote what they can do for you and whatnot. But anyway.
Yeah, so let's get into what hydrogen actually does for you, because it seems to really affect almost all of the regulatory systems of the body, and find a balance that's right for you. I would say the reason I got it was because of its selective antioxidant status. So could you go into detail about what that actually means and why that's helpful and different than maybe like vitamin C?
Oh yeah. Well, okay. So it's really difficult. I'll try to simplify it, but I'll say it's very difficult to say hydrogen in the body, because it's like saying, what does oxygen do?
Yeah.
It does so many things. Now, the first thing I'll say is that people don't understand is that the human body makes hydrogen in the first place. And the human body, this is this is the way that I view health. The human body is like, let's just call it like a car or a house. There's many pieces to it, right? For car, there's tires and the wheels and the engine and fluids, and there's all these pieces. And if one thing is wrong, like you're missing one wheel, you're going to have a problem, right? If you have no oil in the engine, you're going to have a problem. Not one spark plug, like all these different things. And it's the same thing for the human body. So what I tried to do when I was trying to heal myself, and this is ultimately my methods, is I want to give the body everything that it really, really needs. And my technique is pretty simple. One, overcome all nutritional deficiencies, which may sound easy, but
No.
there's a and that's why I did a lot of blood work to make sure that I was overcoming them. Hydrogen, meaning the proper levels of hydrogen that the body really needs in order to run on all cylinders. And people don't know that as you're aging, you're going to make less and less hydrogen in your body. That's just the way that it goes. And hydrogen is so fundamental to the way that everything in the body really works. Just like hydration, which is another one. The body needs to be properly hydrated in order to function properly. And when I say no deficiencies in not just nutrients, but also in minerals, because minerals, same thing. So you got these pieces all working synergistically and perfectly together, but hydrogen and water are like, they're like the foundation of a house. Like, I don't care how well your house is built. If you have a crappy foundation, you're going to have problems. Okay. And ultimately, what was discovered about hydrogen is that, yes, it functions as a selective antioxidant. It does way more than that, by the way. There's so many things. The truth is that even scientists don't really know exactly how it totally functions or how it does what it does, but they can see that it's doing it, right? They can see that, the inflammation comes down. They can see better oxygen levels because, the pH of your blood, for example, which actually stands for potential hydrogen. But the one that, in my opinion, is the most impressive is in Japan. They would have a list. I wish I had it for you. They had a list of all these medical problems that they had seen through their scientific studies that hydrogen was basically helping and even oftentimes working better than pharmaceuticals, right? Without the side effects. And they had all these medical problems, like just a huge list. And then on this massive list, next to each medical issue, they would show the pharmaceutical drug that was used for that particular condition. And then drug or drugs. And then next to that, they would show even more drugs that were oftentimes being used for the side effects of the previous drug. And so you have a massive list of these medical issues. And the list of medicine, it was just off the charts. Like, it was so huge. And then they showed hydrogen. And they just had one thing. And the scientists could not wrap their mind around. They're like, how can this one thing do something for all these medical issues? Like, it didn't make any sense. They're like, it's not possible, but yet we're seeing it, we're witnessing it, and we can't understand it. And so millions of dollars later, and a lot of intelligent people working on this for many years, they discovered that 97 to 98% of all disease appears to come down to just one thing, and that was free radical damage. So free radicals in the liver would cause liver problems. Free radicals in the eyes would lead to different eye problems, and so on and so forth in the body. And these free radicals, in my opinion, really just forms of oxygen. So like ROS, reactive oxygen species, oxidative stress. It's almost like just like a different form of oxygen. For example, like even ozone's O3, that's a different form of oxygen. And these free radicals, hydrogen appears. Now, this is what another interesting thing, because you mentioned vitamin C. People don't know that basically antioxidants actually come in different sizes. They're not all the same size. So I wish I had a chart for people, and maybe you can pull one and share with your audience. But if you look at the size of vitamin E, and then you look at the size of vitamin C, and you look at the size of glutathione, all these are antioxidants, and then you show hydrogen. Hydrogen is so tiny compared to these other antioxidants, and it's a selective antioxidant. So this is very, very different. Vitamin C is not selective. It's just going to do what it does, which you don't actually always want. You really want in life, and even in health, you want balance in all things. Kind of like water. Too much water will literally kill you. And you could flood the whole world with too much water. You could also dry up the whole world like the Sahara Desert and then have no water. I mean, life is about balance, right? And you really need balance in all things. What I will say about hydrogen, like my own personal opinion on it, is that it brings balance to the human body. That's the beauty that I've seen about it. And I believe that we have way too many free radicals, way too much oxidative stress in our body because of everything in the environment now. Everything that's in your water, everything that's in your food. I mean, I don't know how much you've learned even about microplastics and how those are affecting us in major ways. And I think that hydrogen is, one of the things that I personally like to do, or that I did do already when I was trying to figure out my health issues, is I look to nature for answers. And have you ever heard of a place called Lourdes, France, or Lourdes, France, depending on pronunciation?
After hearing you talk about it.
And just for people who don't know, Lourdes, France has like these quote unquote magic waters that people would, drink from, and these all medical issues that they would have just magically would disappear. And nobody understood why. And they actually had a lot of documentation, like literally documenting people's medical problems going away. And so they literally sent scientists there to study the water. Nobody could figure out what the magic was. And it was the Japanese that discovered that water had high levels of molecular hydrogen, this special quote unquote gas. I personally think the future of medicine is going to be a lot of gases, different types of gases. Again, I am a fan of oxygen therapy. I'm a fan of ozone therapy, but without hydrogen, it's never going to work as good. It's unbelievable. One of the stories, one of the things, like for gut issues, hydrogen's amazing for the gut. I've worked with people with Crohn's disease, celiac disease, all sorts of, IBS, all sorts of different gut issues, and have had really good success with it. People who've literally been going to doctors for years, decades. Even people with like what's it called when they have they get exhausted really easily. I can't remember what
Chronic fatigue.
Yes, chronic fatigue syndrome. That's right, CFS. Thank you. And so I've worked with a lot of these people, and with, again, amazing success, because the average person doesn't know they don't know about hydrogen, they don't know how to use it correctly. But one of the things that I've seen about it is also the ability to absorb your nutrients better. So that's a really, because I think we have major problems right now with not just deficiencies, but we know that our food is lacking. I mean, I hate to say it, but the soil, the way that things are grown, it's one of the reasons that I'm here in Japan, and I really like it too, because you should see like the way the farmers do things here. It's so impressive. I'm very impressed by the way they treat their soil and their food. I mean, their food is just, I don't know, second to none. It's very impressive. But when I was getting my blood work, it was one of the things, a pattern that I was noticing, and even my doctors were noticing, depending on who I was working with at the time. The level of absorption of nutrients that I was getting was like off the charts. They literally couldn't believe it. I remember one doctor, she asked me about my diet, which I don't like to talk about too much, because talking about what you eat and everything, or what you believe in regards to diet, seems to cause a lot of problems. Everybody seems to have a different sort of.
So, yeah, I mean, it's very, very personal. I even in my practice, I never tell someone what to eat. Like, you have to figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, if people are open-minded, that's one thing, or if you can have an open conversation. But it's almost like talking politics. People lose their marbles. I'm a big guy, right? So I mean, whatever. Same thing with water. People can argue with me all they want. I go for clean water, and of course I put hydrogen in it. But when they saw the levels of certain nutrients and minerals in my blood, they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe, based on how I was eating. One doctor was even like, "Wait a second, how long have you been eating like this?" Because she thought it's probably a new diet, and I'm like, I would say about a decade, and she just couldn't believe it. She said, this. If I would think it's impossible. She said, but yet I'm looking at your blood and it's unbelievable. And she wanted to actually, it's funny because a lot of doctors won't even ask you, but she wanted to know, because for her own daughter was sick, trouble, by the way, with the proper being able to absorb nutrients properly, and this is huge. I mean, this is a really, really big deal, in my opinion. And so hydrogen, I've seen it just do amazing things in regards to that, on top of everything else that it does. But I think it just makes everything work better, synergistically. And of course, some of the stuff that they've seen also is that it's a anti-inflammatory, yes, a selective antioxidant, even like a signaling molecule. Sometimes you just need proper signal. The big one is the way that, well, a lot of the stuff I'm already mentioning is big, but also the way that it affects your blood and the pH of your blood, so that you can absorb or saturate oxygen levels properly, within the body. And just on and on it goes. The things that I've seen for even dementia and Alzheimer's. I mean, we are told that it's impossible to fix something like dementia and Alzheimer's. And I've shown videos. I have testimonials of people who I've worked with. There was a lady whose mother was suffering from dementia. And so she did basically my protocol, and the results blew my mind. I mean, it blows my mind. I almost feel like I've been brainwashed to believe that these things aren't fixable. And that really blew my mind. And working with people, there's a great testimonial on the company. So the best hydrogen machine in the world is a Japanese hydrogen machine. And there's a company called Holy Hydrogen. The website's holyhydrogen.com. They have their own YouTube channel too. And there was a wonderful story. It was about a woman who actually I had worked with. She had, what was it called again? It wasn't TDS. It was some type of traumatic brain injury. That's what it was. Traumatic. And she had seen so many doctors. This was a very sad story because she had seen so many doctors for many years, could not fix this issue. She contacted me. It was really hard to talk to her because she would forget everything within 5 to 10, maybe 15 seconds. So it was very frustrating to say the least, but I felt terrible for her. But she really wanted to know my protocol. So she ended up doing my hydrogen protocol. She contacted me about, I think it was 6 months later, if I remember correctly. I didn't even recognize who it was when she reached out to me because I got on the phone with her and she was talking like a normal person. And she said, I just wanted to contact you to say thank you for saving my life. And I was like, I saved your life? Who is this? And it was so sweet that she reached out and did that. And what I didn't know that she told me, obviously, all these months later, she said, I was actually going to end my life. And I was like, wow, I didn't know. And she said, I saw you on an interview, much like this. And she said, I thought, what do I have to lose? I'm just going to go ahead and, look into this. And a lot of scientific evidence, by the way, that people can read about, molecular hydrogen. I believe at this point, there's like over 2,000 studies. I mean, we're not talking like 1,500. We're talking over 2,000. In Japan, it's medically approved, for stuff. And so it's pretty mind blowing if you do it correctly, but it absolutely changed her life. And she ended up doing an interview on that company's, I think their YouTube channel or whatever. And she's an amazing testimonial, but there's been so many. I mean, hydrogen, it's my, so anyway.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously why I wanted to order a machine. And when I was trying to decide which one to order, your YouTube video and your reviews of different machines was incredibly helpful by kind of filtering through, like, obviously don't get the $50 water bottle from Amazon, but do I really need the $7,000 machine? There's anything and everything in between. So can you explain maybe a little bit of the difference between these? I think there's even an MLM that sells like a water bottle versus the one that you recommend.
Yeah, the thing I'll say about hydrogen is I wish, so if we're talking about carbon distillers, for example, there's quite a few out there that are good. If people want to know what I use, this one's from a website called mypurewater.com. And if they do want a discount code, it's the same as my YouTube channel name, Uprising144K. For the hydrogen machines, it's different because for distillers, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
The hydrogens, man, I tell you, almost everything out there, in my opinion, is pretty garbage. And I don't understand why they haven't caught up, but the Japanese are the number ones in hydrogen. And they are definitely by far the best at making the hydrogen machine. Just because something's more expensive doesn't really make it actually better. The best machine I've ever seen, and I know all the stuff out there, is the one from holyhydrogen.com. And that one does, one thing that I had to learn about when it came to hydrogen was, first, you really want to have access to both the water, which you're dissolving a gas into the water, and you really want to do it cleanly, properly, proper levels. There's a lot of things to look at. And then the gas inhalation. So you do really want both. And you want them to both be done properly and safely. Excuse me, just to caution people out there, like, I would never use, there's like hydrogen pills out there. After I saw the lab reports of what's in them, I'll never use those ever again. And I did in the past. The hydrogen bottles that you talked about, what people don't realize about hydrogen is the engineering. So the science of metals, like the metallurgy, is really important to understand. And almost every machine out there is actually from China. So a lot of people do not realize that. So a real simple rule of thumb is anything that uses stainless steel or plated metals, or anything from China, just stay away from it when it comes to the world of hydrogen. As far as the Japanese unit, I stumbled upon it by doing massive amounts of research, and the way they did it was absolutely perfect. And it's very affordable. And I found out in time that this is what, like, the real people in the know in Japan, this is what they use. It's called the Lourdes Hydrofix Premium. And on top of it all, I learned that these hydrogen machines are not very reliable. So they're actually inherently unreliable. And so this machine that I happened to eventually find is also very reliable. So in the long term, which you're going to use just like a water filter, you're going to use it for the long term. This actually ends up being the cheapest way, which was really to make the hydrogen. And then the membranes, people don't talk about the membranes enough. And again, I saw lab testing on what's inside these membranes, and the Japanese literally developed their own. And they developed these technologies that literally nobody has. The way they actually structure the hydrogen, by the way, which nobody in the industry does that. They're the only company in all the world of hydrogen that literally lab tests, and basically every single machine is lab tested and certified. Every single one. Nobody does that. It's way too expensive, way too time consuming. There's a reason this particular hydrogen machine and company are the number one in the world, number one in Japan. And when you're number one in Japan, that says a lot, you know.
Yeah.
So that's the machine that I also noticed gave me the best results, because I tried different machines throughout the years, and I learned as I went. And actually, the heart condition I had, which was one of the issues that I had, I never thought in a million years that a hydrogen machine was going to make that issue go away. And I was told by a cardiologist that this condition was, going to end my life unless I did some type of surgery or did something along those lines. And using that particular machine, the Lourdes Hydroflex Premium, like my condition was gone in a little less than 6 months.
Wow.
And unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. And then I replicated it. There was other people who I've met who had heart conditions, same thing, so it's been really, really impressive, what this technology can really do. And it's one of the things that it's approved for is for the heart. So, for like people who have heart attacks, that's another thing that hydrogen has been approved, medically approved for. Strokes, there's some real positive stuff in regards to cancer. But yeah, that's the best machine. I would just caution people, because people ask me all the time. I get a million questions about it, like literally every week. If you can't do hydrogen properly, I honestly just say, just don't do it. Don't do it, because we're talking about inhaling gases, especially like stuff that uses like lye. If you've ever heard of lye, sodium hydroxide, a lot of machines use those. I'm a little surprised. Or one that mixes oxygen with hydrogen. And there's a lot of stuff that people, they call it Brown's gas, but don't fall for it, because the medical data is really about pure hydrogen. You're already breathing in oxygen. You don't want to supplement it regularly, but hydrogen you can actually basically do regularly. So it would be used at a different rate as compared to things like oxygen. So
yeah, I work with go ahead. Just saying, I work with a lot of people who tend to be highly sensitive and also went through mast cell activation like I did. And a lot of them, when I started talking about it, came to me and said, oh, I had a horrible reaction to that. And I was like, well, was it this machine? Was it a tablet? Was it Brown's gas? And they actually were like, oh, it actually probably was this other thing. Or yes, it was a tablet. Or it was this machine. I don't even know what it was at my doctor's office. So it's really important to not throw hydrogen out, because you might have tried something else that maybe wasn't this kind of medical grade quality in the machine.
Yeah, the purity, obviously, super, super, super important. Again, just like water, somebody could drink water and have a bad experience, but you're not going to have a bad experience, in my opinion, from super clean water, like the cleanest water there is. You're not going to have a bad experience. If you're breathing in air, like oxygen, again, if it's of super high purity, you're not going to have a bad reaction, in my opinion, to oxygen. And same thing goes for hydrogen. I mean, your body makes hydrogen as long as the is extremely high, in my opinion, I think people will be fine. In fact, I think it literally, in my opinion, I'll say, it's actually the safest gas known to man. So a lot of people don't know this. I was talking to a diver recently. When you go deep sea diving, oxygen is actually toxic to the body. And under pressure, the body builds up in the body. They literally, when they go deep sea diving, use almost no oxygen. So go deep into the water, not shallow diving. They have a lot of oxygen things. But when you go really deep, they take out almost all the oxygen. They just leave a little sliver. And what do they use? Hydrogen. And then they also helium. And helium is basically another form of hydrogen. So they switched to those gases partially because of the purity. of those gases and less toxic to the human body. So somebody saying they're having a bad reaction to hydrogen, I just have a real hard time believing that one. But yes, do it correctly. And that goes for a lot of things. I'm sure you know that. Supplements. I mean, I've seen, heavy metal contamination in supplements and all sorts of crazy stuff. And you just want, just like food. I mean, food has pesticides and all this crazy stuff. You want to try to eat as clean as you possibly can. It's all about purity. That was a huge part of my journey, is purity, overcoming deficiencies, and then obviously, really clean water with hydrogen. And it's just works so beautifully.
Yeah, and so simple, so basic.
Yeah.
So that leads me to my next question. Is there any contraindications for molecular hydrogen from a good quality machine like the Lourdes?
The only thing that I caution people when it comes to hydrogen is it works so good that if you have it, for example, like, and it, I didn't even mention it. It even shows to have very powerful anti-aging properties. So that, like really amazing for the skin and things like that too. And they did some interesting, I saw an interesting study in Japan too, actually, in regards to how it was affecting the blood. But the big thing that I would tell people is, one, let's say you have high blood pressure and you're on pharmaceuticals. I tell people, please monitor your blood pressure while using hydrogen and doing a proper hydrogen protocol, because I've seen it a million times. Even people don't believe me, and I keep telling them, please be cautious, because let's say they would have high blood pressure without the medicine. So they take the medicine to have, healthy blood pressure. And then they start using hydrogen. So what happens is the blood pressure ends up going too low, because the hydrogen, in my opinion, what it's doing is it's not only fixing the underlying issue, but I also think the body becomes even more, anything that you're taking, including these pharmaceuticals, it makes it more effective. And so blood pressure drops too low. I remember working with, there's so many examples, but there was one lady that had so much trouble controlling her blood pressure. Her doctor had her on the maximum dose. So she wasn't checking it because she didn't believe me. She's like, oh, I've never had low blood pressure in my She was overweight too and had a lot of medical issues. She said she felt dizzy. She finally did check it and it was way too low. And she's like, whoa, eventually the hydrogen helped her get off the high blood pressure medicine. And that's, I've seen just a lot, in regards to these things. And the other one, so just really monitor your levels and then work with your doctor, your physician, and they'll probably wean you off until eventually you're off of the pharmaceutical, most likely. In my opinion, that's obviously a good thing. You don't want to be on these pharmaceuticals. The other would be people with who have diabetes. So diabetes is another big one. I've worked with numerous people with diabetes where, again, they're taking so much of the medicine to regulate their blood glucose. What happens with the hydrogen? It makes their blood glucose go too low. And then, again, issues in regards to that. So if you're going to do it, again, monitor your levels. And eventually, if you follow the right protocol, you can get off those medicines if you have a type 2 diabetes. Type 1's different. But I have worked with people with type 1 diabetes. I even had, I put a video out because one doctor, again, was blown away by the results I was getting with his patient, because we were able to have this one lady go without any medicine for almost half a year. He was like, that's impossible. But he monitored her and I was able to achieve that with her. And so that was pretty, he thought it was pretty funny. He's like, he didn't know who I was. I was just giving her the protocols.
Yeah.
And he's like, whoever this person is, he should get a Nobel Prize for it.
Oh, and that was type 1 diabetes?
That was type 1, yeah.
Wow, that's really incredible.
It was, he said he wouldn't believe it unless he saw the results himself. He was monitoring her all the time, and she was, her glucometer, and she was writing everything down that she was eating and taking pictures of the glucometer. And it was a big ordeal. He wanted to track everything because he was really worried about her. He couldn't understand how she was going without medicine. He's like, this is just not doing this. And so those are the big ones, that I would tell people. But also, I've worked with a lot of people who've had kidney issues. They always say that kidney damage is irreversible. I've had some really good success with that one also. And so depending on that, then obviously you need to understand how much water you can drink, because sometimes depending on the condition of people's kidneys, But for that one, again, clean water is a huge part of the protocol, but hydrogen's obviously another big part. And of course, I modify my protocols depending on what somebody is going through, because with the kidneys, I have them do a lot more of the hydrogen gas inhalation, or people who have like a lot of like lung issues, more of the inhalation. But I like using both of them in a certain combination. I have found that works best. It's kind of a protocol that I invented, but it's gaining a lot more traction, and everybody's been utilizing that, copying that method that I came up with. So far, they've done 2 studies on my method, and they found that it works better than any other method ever used before. So it works really well, and that's why the machine that I use and recommend is important, because it can do both. You know, you're and don't you find it interesting? I mean, because you have it, so this makes it a lot easier. You see how small it is?
Yes, I travel with it. That's why I wanted that one too.
And it's so easy and simple to use. They made it easy for us, right? And it doesn't, I mean, to be quite honest, it doesn't look like super impressive. It just looks like a coffee maker or something, you know? But all the technology is within the metal and within the membrane. And the design itself, you know, you probably notice how they have water in 2 different chambers. And that's for the purity, by the way, of the hydrogen. The way that it makes the nanobubbles. Which model did you get? You know, is yours all the full gray one?
Yeah. Whatever the most recent one was, I got it in May of this year.
So that's the absolute newest one. So that one, I haven't even released the footage. I have the footage, actually. I just haven't released it. That one is it's a new technology that literally nobody has. Nobody even thought it was possible. They did it almost by accident because they kept improving the machine and every little thing. That's what the Japanese do, by the way. They're like obsessive.
Yes.
And every little thing. And that thing is making something that is called sticky hydrogen. So the hydrogen literally is like sticking to things. And in my opinion, that's actually a really good thing. You know, it actually builds up in the body. So there's images, like I've seen imaging where it's like building up in the liver and building up in your body, kind of like vitamin D. Like I'm really big on vitamin D. Vitamin D is really important. And I was reading the research from a doctor who's like the #1 specialist in the world. He actually runs a hospital. He found out that if you go through something traumatic, like a car accident or something, or even when you're going through surgery, if they cut you open or something, your vitamin D levels will drop in half within 50 seconds. So your body immediately uses up these stores of vitamin D, right? Your body's storing them up for an emergency or whatever comes up. Hydrogen, in my same thing. Your body is storing it up, and it prepares itself for whatever might come its way, because hydrogen has another thing that's really impressive. If you watch my video number 8, I have all my videos numbered. Video number 8 shows what the cells look like when they're exposed to, for example, like chemotherapy or radiation, with or without hydrogen. And you can see the difference. It's massive. And there's so many studies how protective hydrogen is. And well, we know it's, you know, selective antioxidant, but that's one of the things that I really like about hydrogen too, because I know we're being exposed to stuff like constantly. Nobody's. And if you're trying to prevent disease or if you're trying to treat it, in my opinion, hydrogen is like the biggest no-brainer, and so is clean water. I mean, those 2 things, no matter how you're going to eat or whatever you're going to do, I just think it's the biggest no-brainer in life, because, you know, I know that none of us are going to live forever, but it's all about quality of life for me now. It's all about, I got to feel good while I'm alive, you know, and that's where I choose to spend my money on clean water, clean hydrogen, clean food. I just want to feel my best while I'm here.
Yes, of course. Is that why you're in Japan?
Yes, I'm here because, well, for many reasons. One, I'll tell you, the science and the knowledge they have about water here is second to none. I mean, on water, on hydrogen, on minerals, by the way, those 3 things are so huge. And so I'm learning as much as I can, you know, as far as any new medical data and whatnot. And then, of course, the springs, they have hot springs, you know, that I go to here basically every single day, once, twice a day. And they have hot and cold natural springs. And so that's been another really big one. And then the food, I'm very impressed by the way they're growing the food here. And that's been really amazing too. And so I just, and the fact that it's really safe here, and it's quiet and yeah, there's a lot of nice things about being over here right now. And I know that in America, everything's pretty crazy these days.
Yes, my boyfriend's destination of choice is Japan, so we're planning next year hopefully to go for a really long time, and he's saying all
Oh,
the same things as you, like everything is so much better over there. They do everything, they perfect it so much better than we do.
oh man, it's such another. I mean, they really are impressive, and if people just understood the way that the precision at which they do things, and
Hmm.
understand, hydrogen machines, for example, they would really it'd be very clear to them. But the average person just doesn't know, and it's really tricky to navigate the world of health.
Oh
To be
yeah.
quite honest, there's a lot of garbage stuff out there. Like you're paying for things that could potentially harm you. I've actually seen it a lot,
Hmm. Oh
and
yeah.
um, and it sucks, right? And I don't think you need that many things to be healthy. You know what I mean? Like you don't need 1,000, supplements or whatnot. And sometimes it's keep it simple. That's just my opinion that I went through.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I probably spent $100,000 on all sorts of things, looking for the thing outside of myself that was going to try and fix things. Hundreds of protocols. Some I felt better, some I felt worse. And finally, when I kind of surrendered and just really wanted to focus on those foundational things, like I need to be outside a lot more. I need to be taking care of my nervous system, that kind of stuff, that's when things really started to shift, where you're not so desperate. And that's one of the things with the molecular hydrogen. It did help to reverse some of those last lingering things I was struggling with, but it also kind of took away like the health anxiety that a lot of people go through after they're sick, where you just are like waiting for the shoe to drop kind of a feeling. Um, because now I'm like, well, I can heal from anything. I've got molecular hydrogen. I'm not worried about getting sick. I'm not worried about traveling. I'm not worried about that. I've got molecular hydrogen.
It's like it really is almost like having a guardian angel.
Yes.
Um, I mean, I'm serious. The way, like I said, the way that it protects the body is so impressive. And
Hmm.
so, it's not like, I mean, in all these years, I used to get sick so easily.
Yeah.
Because my immune system was absolute trash. And for a very long time, I haven't gotten sick. And then I did get like a really, really, I'm going to call it the flu, but I'm sure everybody knows it starts with a C. And it hits everybody differently. And there's also different variants and stuff. But in my opinion, there's something new out there that we will probably hear more about later. I don't know if you heard about what's going on in California, but I'll tell you, this thing hit me and some other people actually that I know really, really hard. But what I did is I literally slept with the hydrogen. I put on the hydrogen gas, and oh man, what a difference! And people linger with the long flu. I'll call it that, right? The long C
Hmm.
word. And people, I've known a lot of people who don't use hydrogen who've had that issue, and this was so bad. I mean, it hit me so hard, but I could just feel it in my body that I think I would have had that issue of the long quote unquote flu that would have lingered. I know people who have coughs that lasted easily over a year, even over 2 years. In fact, I had a client recently that I was working with who had this cough that just would not go away. She had had it for about 2 years. And so, of course, she got on the hydrogen. She got so much improvement in a very short period of time. I think it only took like 2, 3 weeks and it improved by 80%. She's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I wish I would have known about hydrogen sooner. Um,
Yeah.
and so it really is just a really great tool. Like you were saying, it's just a great tool to have, and it enhances everything. Again, the absorption of nutrients and
Hmm.
negative effects from different things. So, yeah, when you guys go to Japan, let me know. And I don't know if we happen to, if it all works out, we happen to be in the same area. Maybe we'll say
For
hello,
sure.
or
Yeah,
I'll
that'd be awesome.
just some restaurant that I don't.
Oh yeah, my boyfriend is a big foodie, so he already has like all the restaurants mapped out, planned out where he wants to go.
You guys are gonna love it. You say you're gonna go for a long period of time.
Yeah, we want to go for at least a month, maybe even more.
There,
Because everything I do is virtual, so it's easily moved, although the time difference, obviously, you're ready for bed. I'm just starting my day.
I you guys you'll absolutely love it, and I hope everything, goes well when you guys finally do that.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So you've answered all of my questions. I think the only last question I had that everyone asked me is, can you overdo it? Like you said, you slept with the hydrogen, which I did as well at one point.
Yes.
Is there ever too much?
In my personal opinion, no, because first of all, with hydrogen, if you get too much, your body is literally just going to off gas it. So
Mhm.
with exhale, that's actually one of the ways that they measure hydrogen is through the breath. And it's really amazing some of the stuff it does for like the metabolism, people's weight loss. I have a really great story, but I won't go into it in detail. But I did a video on it where this guy is like really into health, and he measures everything, and he was measuring the gases that were coming out of my mouth with some devices that he has, and he tries to do everything to control his gases, like he's trying to do the keto diet, and he does fasting, and he does all this stuff. And there's this device, I believe, if I remember correctly, he was able to measure a 3, which is like the best ever, because the average person will do like a 5 or a 4. And he said he'd never seen anything below a 3. And when he did mine, it measured a 1. And he just couldn't believe it. He thought it was a mistake. But, so I think it really changes the way that, again, just the way the body functions. There's been data where you use hydrogen, and they can see that it has long-term effects even when you stop using it. So it still affects you, for the long term. Like I said, it builds up in your body. And so as far as using too much of it, in my opinion, it's actually, again, the safest gas known to man, as long as it's made, again, cleanly and properly.
Mhm.
But no, I can't think of anything other than the stuff I mentioned with certain medical issues. Now, one thing that you can overdo, not because of the hydrogen, it's because of the water. So the science shows basically you don't really want to drink over 1 liter of water in a 1 hour period,
Mhm.
because kidneys can only, anything beyond that is going to strain the kidneys. So for hydrogen water, part of the protocol, depending on the person, is I always drink 1 liter at a time, half a liter to 1 liter, but usually 1 liter on an empty stomach, is usually how I start my day. And so I don't know if you watch my video called, and then of course how fast you have to drink it, because the hydrogen escapes very quickly actually out of the water. But if people want to know about protocols, my video 337, I talk a little bit more about protocols. If you haven't seen it, definitely watch video 426. It just kind of shows you some really like do's and don'ts on the machine and how to care for it so that it will last you a crazy long time. And then 388 is just some data on water that I've always thought is a good video.
Perfect. Yeah. So your YouTube is the Hydrogen Man.
The name of the channel is Uprising 144K.
Okay.
I think type in Hydrogen Man, it might pop up, but it's that's the official name of the YouTube channel is Uprising 144K.
Awesome. And is there anywhere else people can find you?
I mean, people can find me on Twitter, or otherwise known as X, or people can find me on Instagram. People can find me on some stuff on Rumble, but all my latest and complete data is on YouTube, because it's just a place to put it there, and it's easy to find. And and if it's important to people to share this information, please share it, because I've noticed that I don't know what's going on with the whole YouTube thing. I don't know if it's an algorithm issue or if it really is like they're attempting to shadow ban what I'm doing, because you'd be surprised at some of the videos that YouTube's been attacking me for lately, and they've been deleting my content. And
I'm not surprised.
I'm starting, I'm not even a vicious guy, but I'm like, because I'm so small time compared to a lot of people out there. So try to get a hold of this information before it's too late, because I think it's important, and they either do know about it and they don't want people to know, or I don't know what it is. But anybody who you care about, or if you have your own medical issues, definitely look into this. It's something that I think is really special, and in the future, I think it's going to big time change the world. I think it's very, very, very important stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I think so too. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I want to respect your time. I know it's getting late there. I really appreciate all of your knowledge and all the information you've put out that helped me find this machine, and that will also help lots of other people. And hopefully we will connect again soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. If people want to if people have more questions like your viewers, then maybe we can do another follow-up video too, because sometimes that happens. So.
Yeah, sure. That would be awesome. All right, everyone. Yes, thank you so much, Greg, for being here. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, everyone. I am just so thrilled that you're listening to the Healer Revolution podcast. This has been a huge passion project for me and super therapeutic on top of that, helping me to use my voice and connect with other like-minded individuals. So if you're enjoying the podcast, please like and subscribe. Please share on social media or with your audience or friends or loved ones. I truly appreciate it. It does take a lot of time and financial costs to run the podcast, and it is not a moneymaker, let me tell you. So if you are enjoying this, I would truly appreciate your support just by sending me a post, a like, and a subscribe. Thank you so much.